Title: The Man in the Mirror. I never saw myself as superstitious. I'm Greg, a 34-year-old accountant living in a small Ohio town. My life is standard: a 9-to-5 job, a modest home, and a loving wife, Emily, who often teases me about my love for organized spreadsheets. We share a cozy house with peeling paint and a garden my mother would call quirky. Everything felt ordinary, until last month. It began with the mirror in our hallway, an antique hand-me-down from my grandmother. She claimed it held memories. I didn't think much of it until one evening at dinner. "Do you ever feel like something's watching you?" I asked, half joking. Emily raised an eyebrow. "What, like a ghost? You've read too many horror novels." I laughed, but later, while brushing my teeth, I noticed my reflection in that mirror. The hallway was dim, shadows dancing on the walls. For a moment, my reflection didn't match my movements. I leaned in closer, squinting. The image lingered a beat longer before sinking with me again. I dismissed it as fatigue. As days passed, I noticed oddities. The mirror would fog up while the rest of the house remained dry. One morning, I swear I saw a figure behind me, just a flash, as I rushed out. I turned, heart racing, to find the hallway empty. "Greg, you're acting weird," Emily said one night, concerned in her voice. "Did something happen at work?" I shrugged it off, claiming stress over an audit. But the truth was, I was uneasy about that mirror. I started avoiding it, opting for the back door and kitchen. One Friday evening, I came home to find Emily on the couch with takeout. "Hey, everything okay?" she asked, noticing my pallor. "Yeah, just tired," I replied, glancing at the dreaded hallway. I felt it pulling at me. That night, I heard strange noises, soft tapping like fingernails on glass. I followed the sound to the hallway, standing frozen before the mirror. It was dark, and my reflection was barely visible. But something was different. The shadow behind me seemed darker, more pronounced. "Greg," Emily's voice broke through the silence, "what are you doing?" I turned to her, heart racing. "Nothing, just looking." When I turned back, the shadow was gone, but a chill ran down my spine. The air felt heavier, and I caught a sweet scent, like overripe fruit. The next day, I researched the mirror's origins. Hours later, I discovered it belonged to a woman named Clara, rumored to have lost her mind. Stories spoke of her seeing someone in her reflection, someone who whispered to her at night. That night, I lay awake, the tapping returning, louder this time. I turned to Emily, who was deep in sleep. I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Taking a deep breath, I decided to confront my fear. I crept to the hallway. As I approached the mirror, I noticed a slight shift. The surface looked almost liquid, shimmering in the moonlight. I reached out, my fingertips grazing the glass. Suddenly, a hand slammed against the other side, starkly contrasting my own. My heart stopped. "Greg," a voice whispered, shaky and breathy. "Help me." I stumbled back, falling to the floor. Emily bolted upright, eyes wide. "What happened?" "There's someone in the mirror," I gasped, pointing. But when we looked, it was just our reflections, wide-eyed and terrified. I shook my head, trying to clear the fog in my mind. I was losing it. "Greg, you're scaring me," Emily said softly. "Let's just go to bed." I reluctantly agreed, but sleep eluded me. The weight of the mirror felt suffocating. The next morning, I found Emily gone. Panic rose in my chest as I called her name, searching every room. She was nowhere. Then, as I stumbled back into the hallway, I saw it again. The mirror shimmered, and that familiar hand pressed against the glass. "Help me!" The voice came again, clearer this time. It was hers. Cold sweat trickled down my back. "Emily!" I cried. Just come closer." Trembling, I stepped closer, heart racing. Shadows began to swirl, and a face started to form in the glass. Emily's face, distorted and anguished. "Please," she whispered, her eyes pleading. I reached out, but suddenly the mirror cracked. "No!" I screamed, recoiling as shards fell, revealing darkness behind the glass, a void pulsing like a heartbeat. I turned and ran, the sound of shattering glass echoing in my ears. Days have passed since that night. I still hear whispers, feel the weight of that mirror in my mind. Emily hasn't returned, and the silence gnaws at my sanity. I don't know if the mirror is gone or still lurks in the shadows, waiting for me to return. I've taken to sleeping with the lights on, but even then I can feel darkness creeping in, whispers growing louder, calling for me. It's only a matter of time before I look again, before I answer.
Title: The Sound Behind the Walls. I never believed in the supernatural. As a data analyst in a bustling city, I thrived on numbers and logic. My modest two-bedroom apartment on the second floor was just a block from my office. My routine was predictable: work, gym, quick dinner, and mindless scrolling on my phone until sleep. Simple and safe. But about a month ago, things changed. I began hearing a low, rhythmic thumping from the walls, especially around midnight. Initially, I dismissed it as the pipe settling or my neighbor's old heating system. Still, it was strange enough to make me glance uneasily at the wall, separating my bedroom from the hallway. "Hey, do you hear that?" I asked my girlfriend Claire one night as the sound began again. It was a dull thud, like someone tapping a finger against the drywall. "What?" she replied, half focused on her phone. "Never mind, it's probably just the building settling." Weeks passed, and the thumping grew more consistent, almost like Morse code, punctuating the silence of my apartment. It was unsettling, but every time I mentioned it to Claire, she laughed it off. "You're being paranoid," she'd say, rolling her eyes. "It's just an old building." But it was more than a sound. One night, while lying in bed, I noticed something strange. The light from the street lamp cast long shadows against the wall, but one seemed to move differently, as if something was shifting behind it. I sat up, heart racing, listening intently. Then I heard it, a whisper, faint and indistinct, like someone was trying to say something just out of reach. I strained to catch the words, but only heard the rhythmic thumping grow louder, now accompanied by a chilling rustle, like fingers skimming across the wall. "Okay, that's weird," I muttered, rubbing my arms as a cold sweat broke out across my skin. I decided to play some music to drown out the noise. Claire looked at me, brow raised. "This again?" "I just need to sleep, all right?" I snapped, harsher than intended. She frowned, but eventually turned back to her phone. The next night, the thumping escalated. It felt like it was right next to my ear, a frantic pulse tightening my chest. I couldn't ignore it anymore. After Claire fell asleep, I tiptoed into the hallway, the floorboards creaking beneath my feet. I pressed my ear against the wall, straining to listen. That's when I heard it. A voice, clear and sharp, but oh so familiar. It was Claire, calling my name. "Ben, Ben." Her voice was soft, almost beckoning, but it didn't sound like it was coming from the apartment next door. It felt like it was coming from the walls themselves. My heart raced as I pulled away, breathless. "Claire!" I called, racing back into the bedroom. She stirred, eyes opening. "What is it?" she said, groggy. "I heard you. I thought..." But as I glanced back at the wall, the thumping resumed, and her expression shifted from confusion to concern. "Ben, you're scaring me. It's just a building. Please, let's go back to sleep." But sleep eluded me. I spent the night awake, listening to the rhythmic pounding and whispers that seemed to grow more insistent. I tried to convince myself it was just fatigue, but the next few days deepened my dread. I began noticing other oddities. The lights flickered more frequently, shadows darted just out of sight, and I found myself jumping at the smallest of sounds. One evening, while preparing dinner, I caught a glimpse of movement in the corner of my eye. I turned, heart racing, but nothing was there. "Ben, are you okay?" Claire asked from the living room, her voice laced with concern. "Yeah, just tired," I sighed, gripping the counter hard. But I was anything but okay. The thumping was back, louder, frantic. I couldn't ignore it. I grabbed a flashlight and headed into the hallway. The air felt thick, suffocating as I approached the wall. Then it happened. The wall seemed to pulse beneath my hand, warm and alive. I could feel the vibrations matching my heartbeat. I stepped back, fear coursing through me. "Ben, what are you doing?" Claire's voice called, now panicked. Before I could respond, the thumping ceased. Silence engulfed me, a heavy weight that made my skin crawl. I glanced back at her. She stood in the doorway, eyes wide, fear etched across her face. "I think I heard something," she whispered. I nodded, unable to speak. That's when I felt it, the unmistakable sensation of being watched. I turned slowly, the flashlight beam flickering against the wall, and then I saw it. A shadow, dark and elongated, creeping along the surface, moving against the light. "Ben, what is that?" Claire gasped, stepping back. I was frozen, breath caught in my throat. The shadow twisted, taking on an unfamiliar shape, as if something was straining to break through. Then it stopped, and for a moment, there was only silence. Then the thumping resumed, louder, pounding like a heart. It felt right next to us, as if whatever was behind the wall was desperate to get out. "Run!" I shouted, grabbing Claire's hand, pulling her toward the door. But as we reached for the handle, the walls shook, vibrating with a force that made the whole apartment tremble. We stumbled back as the lights flickered one last time, plunging us into darkness. The thumping turned into a cacophony of pounding, like 1,000 fists battering against the walls, mingled with screams rising from the very foundation. We stood there, paralyzed by fear, as the shadows shifted, coiling around us. Then, just like that, it stopped. The silence was deafening, but the air felt charged, alive, electric. "Ben?" Claire's voice trembled, asking what we both knew but couldn't say. The wall remained ominously still, as if it had been waiting for something. We backed away slowly, not daring to turn our backs. I could feel unseen eyes upon us, the suffocating dread that this was only the beginning.
Title: The Shadow Behind the Curtains. I never thought I'd be the kind of person to post something like this, but here I am, sitting at my kitchen table at 2 a.m., the fluorescent light flickering overhead, filled with an unshakable fear. Maybe writing it down will help, or perhaps it'll just serve as a record of my descent into something surreal and terrifying. I live in a small town in Ohio, where everyone knows each other, and the biggest news is the new diner opening downtown. I work as a graphic designer from home. My days are usually filled with the soft hum of my computer and the scent of freshly brewed coffee. My wife Emily and I lead a quiet life, filled with laughter, shared meals, and the occasional argument about the dishes left in the sink. Things started to shift about a month ago. One evening, while deep into a project, I felt an odd sensation, a prickling awareness that someone was watching me. I brushed it off as fatigue. Emily was out for her weekly yoga class, and I was alone. I tried to focus on the screen, but the feeling lingered. I glanced around the room, shadows cast by the desk lamp dancing against the walls. Nothing seemed out of place. Just a typical Wednesday night, or so I thought. "Just your imagination," I muttered, but the feeling persisted. It crept back every evening after that. I started closing the curtains early, even though we lived on the outskirts of town and no one passed by. But that made it worse. The suffocating darkness outside felt alive, pressing against the glass, whispering secrets I couldn't grasp. One night, Emily came home, her presence a warm comfort. I mentioned my unease, trying to laugh it off. "You've been working too hard," she said, ruffling my hair. "You just need a break." But as the days passed, the feeling intensified. Sometimes when I stepped outside for fresh air, I thought I saw something move in the corner of my eye, just a shadow slipping behind the trees, but it made my heart race. I told myself it was just the wind or a trick of the light. Then came the first strange event. One evening, I heard a soft tapping against the window. It was nearly midnight. I froze, my breath hitching. Carefully, I approached the window, half expecting a raccoon or maybe a stray cat. Instead, I was met with nothing but darkness and the wind rustling the leaves. I shook my head, nervously laughing. Just the branches, I thought, but the laughter felt hollow. That same night, I decided to leave the curtains open, hoping to face whatever was out there. Moonlight spilled into the room, casting long shadows that twisted unsettlingly against the walls. I tried to sleep, but the tapping returned, louder this time. "Mike, are you okay?" Emily's voice broke through. "Yeah, just some wind," I replied, but doubt gnawed at me. As days passed, Emily noticed my growing anxiety. I would jump at noises, a creak from the floorboards, the fridge humming late at night, as if they held hidden meanings. "Maybe we should talk to someone," she suggested one evening, her tone gentle but firm. "Talk to someone about what?" I snapped, regretting the words instantly. I saw the hurt in her eyes and quickly softened. "I'm sorry. It's just, I feel like something is off." The nights grew longer, filled with shadows stretching into unfamiliar shapes. I could swear I heard whispers, faint and indistinct, while lying in bed, the sound of my own heartbeat echoing in my ears. I started keeping a small lamp on, the glow barely illuminating the corners, but it was a comfort. Then came the night I confronted the fear. I sat up, heart racing, convinced I had heard someone speaking, softly, pleading. I crept toward the curtains, dread pooling in my stomach. When I peeked out, I gasped. There, just outside our yard, stood a figure, indistinct and shadowy, blending into the night. It was as if it was neither here nor there, a smear of darkness against the moonlight. I couldn't make out features, but an overwhelming urge to run struck me. Instead, I stood frozen. "Mike!" Emily's voice broke through my trance. The figure turned slightly, as if aware of her presence. It seemed to ripple, and then vanished into the darkness. I stumbled back, breath quickening. "Did you see that?" I asked, panic rising. "See what?" she said, concern morphing into confusion. "That thing," I stammered, "out there!" "It's just the shadows, love. You need to get some rest." But after that night, things escalated. The tapping became incessant, sometimes shifting to scratching.
I felt as though something was trying to get in. I began hearing the whispers more clearly, an almost rhythmic chant that made my skin crawl. I found myself peering out the curtains every hour, searching for that shadowy figure, yet nothing emerged. One evening, after a particularly distressing day, I returned home to find Emily gone. I searched the house, my heart racing. "Emily?" I called, panic rising. The house felt empty, too quiet. In the back of my mind, I knew that the whispering had grown louder, more insistent. I glanced at the curtains, half expecting to see that figure again. Instead, I saw a series of small handprints smudged against the glass, as if a child had pressed their palms against it, desperately trying to get in. That night, sleep eluded me. I could feel the weight of the darkness pressing against the walls, the whispers crescendoing. I finally decided enough was enough. I pulled back the curtains, fully expecting to confront whatever had been haunting me. But nothing prepared me for what I saw. The figure stood closer now, its form almost human but distorted, a gaping void where its face should be. It reached out, and I felt an overwhelming urge to step forward, to let it in. Then, the lights flickered one last time before plunging me into darkness. The whispers turned to a cacophony of screams, and I felt something cold grasp my wrist. I stumbled away. The last thing I heard before silence was my own voice, mingling with the whispers, begging to be let in. I don't know where I am now or what's happening to Emily. All I know is that the shadow behind the curtains is still there, waiting, watching, and it wants me. If you're reading this, please close your curtains tight. You never know what might be lurking just outside.
Title The Whisper in the Walls. Я завжди знаходив комфорт у звичайному. Моє життя передбачуване. Стабільна робота в маркетинговій компанії в Річмонді, Вірджинія, затишна двокімнатна квартира та любляча партнерка Мія. Ми часто сміємося з наших рутин, але останнім часом я почав відчувати тривогу, що наначе прокралася у наш маленький світ. Це почалося місяць тому. Я працював пізно вночі, коли єдиним звуком у квартирі був гул мого ноутбука. Годинник тихо тикнув, і легкий запах попкорну, що згорів, досягав моїх ніздрів. Залишки невдалого перекусу. Я був зосереджений, готуючи презентацію, яка мусила бути ідеальною. І тоді я вперше почув це. Тихе шепотіння зі стін. Я зупинився, прислухаючись, але звук зник, поступившись місцем низькому гулу кондиціонера. Подумав, що це просто ілюзія від тривалого сидіння за екраном, і відмахнувся від цього. Коли я нарешті ліг спати, то прошепотів Мії. «Ти не повіриш, як я провів вечір». Вона лише перевернулася, промовивши «Тобі варто відпочити, любий». Наступного дня все здавалося дивним. Шепіт повернувся. Цього разу чіткіше. Він оселився в кутах моєї свідомості, як віддалене радіо на неправильній частоті. Я намагався його ігнорувати, вважаючи це звуками старої будівлі або телевізором сусідів. Але відчуття, що щось не так, не покидало мене. «Ти це чула?» – спитав я Мію під час вечері, кілька вечорів по тому. Мій голос ледве чутний. «Що?» – відповіла вона, зосереджено опустивши виделку. «Ти останнім часом дивно поводишся». «Просто стіни, мабуть», – сказав я, намагаючись звучати невимушено, але слова здавалися важкими. Дні перетворилися на тижні, і шепоти ставали все настирливішими, крутячись у тиші ночі. Я намагався їх ігнорувати, але кожен скрик, кожен тріск підлоги викликав у мене тривогу. Я почав заглядати в тіні, наполовину очікуючи побачити щось, що ховається за ними. Одного вечора, поки Мія була на клубі книголюбів, я сидів один на дивані, темне світло лампи миготіло. Я знову почув це. Тихе, приглушене шепотіння, слова, які не міг розібрати. Здавалося, стіни дихають, видихаючи таємниці з прихованого місця. Моя шкіра покрилася мурашками, і я відчув, як холод огортає кімнату. Я взяв телефон, гортаючи Reddit на пошуки розваги, але шепоти лише посилилися, відлунюючи в моїй свідомості. «Ти там?» – раптом сказав я вголос. Питання вирвалось до того, як я встиг подумати. Кімната замовкла, але тоді, безсумнівно, м'який голос відповів. «Так, тут». Я впустив телефон, серце калатало. Я намагався переконати себе, що це лише ілюзія, але страх заповнив моє нутро. Мія повернулася додому незабаром, і я заховав інцидент глибоко всередині, бажачи берегти її від свого занепокоєння. Але наступного ранку я прокинувся і побачив Мію на дивані, її очі були широко відчинені. «У мене був дивний сон», – сказала вона, її голос тремтів. «Я чула, як хтось кличе моє ім'я». У мене в грудях затягнувся вузол. Що вони сказали? «Не знаю», – відповіла вона, хитнувши головою, наче намагаючись прояснити думки. Але це здавалося реальним. Того вечора я лежав у ліжку, повністю пильнуючи, слухаючи, як шепоти кружать у стінах. Я відчував себе в пастці, нездатним втекти від зростаючого відчуття страху. Наступного дня на роботі я не міг зосередитися. Тіні в офісі здавалися довшими, більш гнітющими. Я не ділився своїми страхами ні з ким, не хотів здаватися ірраціональним. Дні перетворилися на нескінченний цикл шепотів і невизначеності. Я вже не міг сказати, чи належали вони квартирі, чи моїй свідомості. Я почав записувати звуки, коли залишався один, сподіваючись зловити щось конкретне – голос, слово, що завгодно. Але все, що я отримував, то слабкі ехо тиші. Одного вечора, коли я переглядав записи, Мія зайшла в кімнату. «Що ти робиш?» – запитала вона, її голос сповнений тривоги. «Просто намагаюся зрозуміти, що відбувається», – відповів я, ухиляючись від погляду. «Ти мене лякаєш», – сказала вона, виглядаючи блідою, наче не спала кілька днів. «Може, варто зробити перерву від цього місця?» «Куди ми підемо?» – різко відповів я, більше ніж хотів. «Це просто старі труби чи щось таке». Але всередині я знав, що це не лише труби. Тої ночі я лежав у ліжку, дивлячись у темряву, доки шепоти зростали в какофонію незрозумілих звуків. І тоді, серед усього цього, я чітко почув «Виходь!». Я підскочив у ліжку, серце калатало. Я повернувся до Мії, але її не було. Паніка охопила мене, коли я побіг у вітальню. «Мія!» – крикнув я, мій голос тремтів. Шепоти ставали голоснішими, більш тривожними, наче закликаючи мене покинути. У куту кімнати я побачив її, що бездумно дивилася на стіну. «Мія!» – простяг я до неї руку, але коли це зробив, вона повільно повернулася з дивною порожньою поспішкою. «Тобі не сліду було слухати», – сказала вона, її голос звучав не зовсім як її. Повітря згустилося, і стіни, здавалося, пульсували навколо мене. Я відчув приплив жаху, якого ніколи не відчував раніше. Шепоти огорнули мене, і в той момент я зрозумів, я розбудив щось, що хотіло поглинути нас обох. Останнє, що я пам'ятаю, це темрява, що закривається, жахливий сміх, що відлунює в моїх вухах, коли я відступав назад, світ навколо згасав. Я пишу це вдома батьків, хоча не можу позбутися відчуття, що стіни тут також слухають. Я все ще чую шепоти, іноді навіть у снах. Я не думаю, що колись зможу повернутися в ту квартиру, але боюся, що те, що заховане у тих стінах, все ще чекає на мене, чекає на нас. І тепер, глибоко в душі, я починаю сумніватися, чи не занадто пізно втекти.